Good evening. It's on or about 7 p.m. Monday evening. This is a committee night of the Athens City Council. I'm checking to see that all of our members are present. I believe we are. Very good. In case you're wondering, I'm not Sam Crowell. Sam Crowell is acting mayor tonight, so he's sitting over there. As my sign says, I'm Jeff Reisner. I'm Speaker Pro Tem, or President Pro Tem for Council, and usually I'm sitting down there in the second ward. But because I've hung around here so long, this is where I'm at. So this is, like I said, this is a committee night. What we do here is we have 4 committees, plus a committee of the whole, and each committee discusses committee business. And that is what we do tonight. So I know as committee of the whole, we're going to meet on a topic on the agenda. As you can see up there, it says Council of Governments, in parentheses, solid waste, recycling, and composting management. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about tonight. So if you're here to talk about something else, I won't recognize you to speak. I want to hear people who have something to say about a council of governments, because the city may become involved in that, and to do so, the city will need council permission, and for council to make an intelligent decision, we need information, and I believe we have some people in the audience who know what they're, know more about it than I certainly do, and I would like to hear what they have to say. What we'll do is we'll call a speaker to the podium there, and then they can speak for, I think 5 minutes would be sufficient to say what they want to say. And then various members of council will be free to ask some questions. I'd like to limit this whole discussion for the committee of the whole to half an hour. I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but we have other items that we have to get through. Finance and personnel has to meet, transportation has to meet, and so does city and service safety directors, and we have several topics that we have to get through. So if we all move forward on this in a professional and rapid manner, I think we can get through and find out some information. So with that, I'd like to invite whomever feels qualified to speak, and all you have to do is introduce yourself and who you represent.
My name is Krista Cummings, and I am the Executive Director at Athens Hawking Recycling. Thank you all for inviting us to speak, and Sam Crowell asked me to prepare something just briefly and then be available for questions. So the first thing I'd like to just talk about is the basics of what a council of governments would look like. So the formation of a council of governments would allow for municipalities and the solid waste district to come together and offer a menu of services to their residents at cost for those services. So each community could tailor what they were wanting with the Council of Governments, but it would also allow for a regional approach to waste management as opposed to having each community completely in their own, like putting together their own bids, basically. So the governing board would be made up of the members from those different municipalities, and then also the solid waste district, which is interested in the formation of the Council of Governments. There are several costs that are reduced when operations are handled by a governmental entity. And I've actually created some packets for you all that outline some of that. And I know that we sent our audits as well as our financial forecast sheet, but it seems like maybe those have been challenging for people to see where the rates would be projected to be for their different municipalities. And so I've printed those as well so that it's easier for everybody to see what it would look like, you know, for the rest of this year if the city of Athens decided to contract with the COG later in this year, but also then 25, 26, and so on. And it also includes the specifics of where some of those cost savings come in. I also think it's going to be useful for you all to know a little bit about the history of Athens Hawking Recycling and the city of Athens. Athens City recycling and trash hauling used to be done by the health department. And then when the solid waste districts were formed in the late 80s, those operations were transferred to the solid waste district. The nonprofit was created to offer supportive services to the solid waste district and the city of Athens. In 2014, the solid waste district transferred those operations to the nonprofit. So we've only had the relationship that we've had since 2014, and the COG would essentially be returning to a very similar setup and set of services to the way it was from, 2014 back in history. So the nonprofit and the operations were really centered around the city of Athens. And then obviously we've grown to include other communities as well as county residents as well. The organization is currently solvent and would be able to support the transition. But as time goes on and the recycling center spends its cash reserves to stay afloat, the need to start cutting operations and go through those cash reserves is going to leave the Council of Government with a more challenging financial start. And so that is why making a decision sooner rather than later would be really useful. But so would giving the recycling center a sense of timeline as we go forward so that we know what we need to do to stay solvent in the short term. So I just want to reiterate that the COG would allow for significant cost savings compared to the Athens Hawking Recycling bid to the city of Athens. It would also preserve the city's ability to promote sustainability in the city and then also continue to be a leader throughout the region through the waste diversion. It would also prevent the loss of a significant number of good union jobs in Athens County, where most of our employees shop in the city, as do most residents in this area. We also have been offering personal service to everybody in the city for years. So when you call, you get somebody live who knows what's happening and can help solve problems. And we take a lot of pride in that and want to be able to continue providing that service. The formation of a COG, as opposed to going back to the solid waste district, would also give the city of Athens a seat at the table for long-range planning, which means that the city would be able to have a say in rates and services along with the rest of the communities in the area, which seems like a pretty great plan for the region to me. So. And then, do you want me to stay up here for questions or sit? Okay.
Okay, I'll allow members of council to ask questions. Try to keep them brief. Any questions? Member Swank.
First of all, for those who came tonight, thank you. One, for coming tonight, and two, for all of your emails. Some of them have been exceedingly thoughtful. I've got one today, and I don't mean to call her out, but I will. The one I received from Lorraine today was about as nice an email and as thorough and as an email as we've gotten, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I will say, cut and paste of the same email 17 times, that's a different story. But I really appreciate that because it shows interest in our community, and that's important. That's very important. I just hope when this is all settled and done, you all don't go home and just start watching us on TV. We like your presence here. You mentioned an offer of a menu of services.
Yeah.
We're essentially talking about 4 municipalities: Logan, Athens, Nelsonville, and Amesville. Does that mean that if I lived in, say, Logan, I might be able to pick different items than what we have here in Athens, or would it be uniform across those municipalities?
So some of the communities that you just mentioned have franchise districts and some do not. So for a city such as Athens, which has a franchise district and offers to their residents trash, recycling, and compost, you could utilize the services that the COG offered for trash, recycling, and compost. The city of Nelsonville has a franchise district, but they do not currently offer compost to their residents. So they could decide to only take part in the services that the COG offers for trash and recycling. The rest of the members might, but they could also change their minds in the future and decide to also offer compost services, right? So that would be something that each community could select for themselves. Logan does not have a franchise district, and they have a number of really small haulers that service the city. And so what they have been talking about is one of 2 different things. One would be potentially just offering recycling through the Council of Governments, and the other would be a member and help determine like direction for the COG and what services might be offered, but they may just offer to their residents what they already have through the recycling center, which is the choice to contract directly with us for both trash and recycling. So we're one of the service providers in Logan, and so they could do that as well. Amesville is going to be having their first community forum about joining the Council of Governments and franchising at the end of the month. And so they're not certain what direction they would be going. But it sounds like they're leaning towards franchising and then contracting for service with the Council of Governments.
So then
At this point, many of their residents already have service with Athens Hawking Recycling.
So then each municipality would be able to choose what they wanted to use.
From the menu of services.
Okay.
And this, again, this is the way that the draft agreement and bylaws were written, but the actual content of those are going to have to be finalized in agreement between the solid waste district and whoever decides that they're interested in becoming members. So solid waste district earlier today went ahead and did a resolution saying that they, we're going to move forward with becoming founding members, and they designated 2 people from, one is the director, Jane Forrest Redfern, who is here as well, and then Lenny Eliason to be the representatives from the solid waste district to work out the details on the agreement and the bylaws.
Member Spilness.
Thank you. So I have some very basic questions that perhaps everybody else knows the answer to, but I don't, so maybe a few other people might not either. And one of the questions that I have is, you have a specific set of villages, cities who are on this list. Not all of them have decided they are going to, but what I want to know is, how many do you need, and can we invite others outside of these few? Or is the solid waste district like the boundaries? I mean, I don't know how that works. And then I don't know what a franchise district is.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
So there only needs to be two governmental entities that want to join the COG as founding members for it to form. The way that the current draft agreement and bylaws are written, there is a mechanism for other communities to join. And so it could be as big or small as the founding members decide that they want it to be. So the initial founding members would be the initial voting members with the way it's written, and they would be able to decide whether to admit other members or not as time goes on.
To follow up, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So if Logan or one of these others decides they don't want to, we could still do it with two and then see who else decides to join.
Correct.
But
So,
then clearly, wouldn't the cost vary depending on how many member communities there are?
So Athens City and the Solid Waste District could form the Council of Governments. The way that it was envisioned by the nonprofit, because we're planning on giving up all of our employees, assets, and operations to the Council of Governments, is all of our current contracts would transfer to the Council of Governments. And so you would also, regardless of whether they were founding members or members of the Council of Governments, still be services to OU, Nelsonville, and the Solid Waste District. You also would, the Council of Governments would also be inheriting all of our individual customers, of which we have quite a few spread out throughout both Athens and Hocking customers, or Hocking counties. So you would still have that base of operations. The way that they're written, it would allow the Council of Governments to offer services to non-members because, for example, OU cannot be a voting member of a Council of Governments, but they can contract for services through a Council of Governments the same way they were able to with the Solid Waste District. And I'm sure you all know how intertwined the city of Athens and OU are, and so having both OU and the city of Athens with the same service provider is one of those things that saves costs, saves carbon footprint. So it would be ideal if that structure was maintained. And then the price for those entities like OU would be set by the Council of Governments Board. The franchise district was your other question. So in many municipalities, they have what's called a franchise agreement, and it's part of your city code. And it limits the number of haulers that can provide service in those city boundaries. So in Athens, you have the residential service and the uptown are part of the franchise district. However, commercial businesses have a choice of a select number of approved haulers that they can choose from. The city of Nelsonville, their franchise includes all of the residents, but also all of the businesses. And so they're part of their franchise district. So the city picks for everybody there, businesses included, who the hauler is going to be.
Member Clodfelder?
There are many aspects of this whole Council of Governments proposal that I really like. Clearly, there would be some benefits to it, but I do have a concern, and perhaps this is a question for City Safety Services Director Stone or for President Pro Tem Reisner. How would this COG proposal fit into the bidding that has already happened? The whole bidding process. I know there are laws that govern those. What options would the City of Athens have to really consider this when we already have a contract now with Rumpke?
Sure. Do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
So, thank you, President Reisner. Member Clodfelter, So there's a provision in our current contract that we can terminate it with 60 days notice if we wanted to. You'd want to have everything lined up so that you were able to do that and everything made sense and I's were dotted and T's were crossed before you pulled that trigger. Because the last thing that you want to have happen is service stops. Now, if your question is about bidding and contracts with other entities and to the point about moving those contracts from the nonprofit to the Council of Governments and how long those would stay in effect probably has to do with the terms of that contract and the specific language in there that talks about successors or assigns. And, certainly that's probably something that's above my pay grade and my legal knowledge to be able to interpret those particular contracts. But I think that would be one of those things you want to look at as you're doing projections to understand that can indeed happen. That is to say, for instance, the contract with Ohio University and Ms. Cummings may say, hey, that's in place for 3 years and it doesn't matter who it gets shifted to, it'll stay in effect, and same with Nelsonville. That would be something that we want to look at prior to making a decision.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Picking up on that point, do you know off the top of your head when the Nelsonville contract is up and when the OU contract is up?
Nelsonville is up in March
March, like
of
2
this
months?
year, in 2 months. They have not currently put it out to bid yet. And they had reached out to me about a possible extension in December, but have not reached out to me again. So I know that Nelsonville has expressed some interest in the Council of Governments, but they haven't taken any concrete steps for that. And then, was OU the other
OU,
contract?
yes, ma'am.
Bruce will know the answer to that.
1 to 3 years left, depending on the extension.
Okay, so 1 to 3 years depending on extensions, which would mean 1 year left in the official contract with possible 2-year extensions?
Effectively 1.5 plus 2 1-year extensions available.
So basically through June of 2025 with the option of extensions past that? Okay, thank you.
And OU has traditionally opted to take the extensions, but that's no guarantee that it'll happen this time.
Further questions from council? Administration, you have any questions?
Andy?
So I put these packets together for you all. Can I give them out to you, or how would that happen?
Yeah, you can give them out. No, I guess we do have a question
I do
here.
have one more for you, Chris, if I may. If you are willing to disclose this publicly, do you think the recycling center can hang on to its jobs until these COG decisions are made by each municipality?
So we've already done a round of layoffs because obviously the city of Athens used 6, 7, 8 employees and 3 trucks for service. So we've already either through attrition because people knew they were going to be laid off, or through layoffs already reduced operations. It is not enough to keep us in the black past May. And so depending on how quickly or slowly this process seems like it's going to take, we have plans in the works currently to sell 2 trucks, and then there's another 4 that we're looking at selling. So that would include backup trucks, obviously, not ones that we've been primarily using. We were hoping to hang on to some of those employees and those 2 trucks because they are what would allow us to pick up the city of Athens with fewer hiccups. But once those are gone, it would definitely require a lot more planning between the Council of Governments and the city of Athens of when that transition could happen. So.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you. This may be a question for Ms. Cummings. It may be better answered by Ms. Redfern here with us tonight. I'm just going to read as mentioned, the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District met this morning, passed resolution 2024-1, and I'll just read the pertinent paragraph here. Now, therefore, the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District Board authorizes the director and a member of the board to negotiate with other government entities an agreement and bylaws to form a regional council of government for this purpose. It's my understanding that the city of Athens could do something very similar. And it's a little bit of a chicken or an egg thing with the solid waste district authorizing this morning. I don't believe, and you can help me understand this if I am incorrect, that us deciding to do the same thing automatically as two members forms a COG. We can still have this exploratory committee, because as Director Stone had said, I'm also not sufficiently lawyered up on all of the questions that we have, but that exploratory committee could try to answer some of these additional questions we have, try to continue to work on the drafted documents to get them where we would like them to be before the COG is actually officially formed. There could be later legislation or resolution from the solid waste district that actually formed a COG. Does that sound like I have that correct?
It is correct. So in terms of like next steps and timeline, so the founding members will need to come to an agreement on what exactly you want in the agreement and the bylaws. So Bruce and our board did a tremendous amount of research on what is needed in those documents, and so you have the basic framework in place, based on conversations as well as just reviewing a large number of COGs. And the lawyer that they worked with is one who specializes in the formation of COGs and advising COGs. So it's who helped form the SOPAC Council of Governments, or his law firm did anyway. So you have that basis, but we laid out what the board structure would be. And for example, I've already heard the solid waste district would like to make some changes to what that board structure would be. So you all are going to have to kind of, there's cookie cutter stuff in there, but there's also some real substantive things that you need to make sure works for the city of Athens. The solid waste district needs to make sure works for the solid waste district, and you need to come in agreement on that. And once that subcommittee or the individuals that are representing each municipality in the solid waste district come to agreement, at that point you would want everybody to review the final agreements, vote on them, right? And then once you sign, you file it with the state. They do not need to agree. It just needs to be filed. And then 30 days from then, the Council of Governments can be operational. So the city of Athens probably would not want to give notice of a termination of contract, for example, until that document had been filed with the state, and they knew for sure that it had been filed with the state. So that, it wouldn't be 30 days, but 60 days after that filing before the city of Athens would come on board. So I agree that you want to make sure that you protect each of your entities for sure.
May I follow up?
Yes, follow up.
Thank you. In discussions with Mayor Patterson, who wanted to be here tonight but was had prior commitments outside of town, I know he's very interested, as is Director Stone, in exploring this possibility. From the Solid Waste District Board, the county commissioners, and I appreciate Commissioner Atkins being here tonight, have obviously a little different formation than the City Council of Athens and the city administration. I believe in discussions that I had today with Councilmember Reisner that if the city council decided that this was a way that we wanted to move forward, we would actually recommend that the city administration become the members of this exploratory committee. It wouldn't be a specific council member who would join this exploratory committee. It would be the city administration. And this just came up in our conversation. I don't think either one of us know specifically. I don't know if you know. I know that the Solid Waste District this morning appointed, as you said, 2 members of that board basically to be on this exploratory committee. I don't know if it would be, and maybe Member Swank knows, I don't know if it would be members of council that would join that, or it would be city administration to decide who would be on that committee to explore. Any idea?
I don't know of any legal precedent around that part specifically. I think in the past that it's usually been either a person on council that has worked with, For the formation of SOPEC, it was the mayor of Amesville. Who else? It was Amesville of the city of Athens, right? So who on the city of Athens was working? It was. I know it was.
It was Athens County.
It was Athens County. So it must have. Was there just one commissioner that worked with the mayor of Amesville? Yeah. So I can give you one example, but I doubt that that is set in stone.
I think rather than speculating, I think we should defer to when we have the law director here on that. My gut reaction is, as council, we could pass and place one person on there, two people on there, whatever we wanted to do, because I doubt if it's in the Ohio Revised Code. But again, rather than speculate, I think we should probably wait to see what the law director has to say on that matter. But it does bring up an interesting point. And Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Mayor, we'll just make you Mary. If Athens and the Solid Waste District both passed a resolution right away and started negotiating and came to an agreement without including the other three, would those other three entities still have the opportunity to be considered charter members?
That's the beauty of it. We could write it any way we want it, as long as, you know.
Could you come up to the podium, please? Yeah. You can share it. Let the TV audience know what's going on.
I'm Jane Forrest Redfern. I'm the Athens Hocking Solid Waste District Director and a new grandmother. It's my new title.
No to that.
As acting mayor.
You can call him mayor. He likes it.
As many of you know.
As many of you know, and Krista eloquently said, the solid waste district has been involved in recycling from the very beginning. And we see this, the Athens Hocking Recycling Center, as a major asset of our community and critical to the future of the district. Over the last 14 months, I've been writing the solid waste management plan for us, for Athens and Hocking County, to meet our 25% recycling goal, which is mandated by the Ohio Revised Code. 1988, because I'm the grandma, I can say this, I actually helped write this law, and now I'm actually implementing it. That's crazy. But we basically grew with the Athens Hocking Recycling, and with the city of Athens being the first community in the state as having the first curbside program, it really kind of is a good place for us to start. These are assets that will not come back. They will not come back. We will not have any future ability to be agile, or because it will be up to others to fulfill our needs, and at what cost. We have a good opportunity. The Athens Hocking Solid Waste District, for those of you that don't know, that our board are the 3 commissioners from Athens and the 3 commissioners from Hocking. And they felt very strongly that they wanted to be the founding members of the COG because of our history with building this organization and for long-range planning for our district. There was a split. I wasn't here then, and I'm not going to try to do revisionist history, but the board, after being contacted by many people and by discussing it last month's meeting, we felt very strongly, and they voted this morning to pass this resolution. The next steps for us are to communicate with other jurisdictions. I was asked by Mr. Swank to come tonight to answer some of these questions. The beauty of moving forward is that we can bring everyone to the table that wants to even be part of the discussion. I'm on the listserv for the county planning agency, and there are jurisdictions outside of which have been mentioned that are interested in being part of these discussions. And I prefer not to talk about that, right now. Let them announce what their intention. But we could, through the COG, do so much more. Athens Hockey and Recycling Center has been working very long and diligent. They've done an incredible job with the compost, and they partner with all types of organizations. I've been able, in my 2.5 years, open a recycling center in Logan. We are collecting Christmas trees. That's why I've got my boots on today. We've been able to have charm events with Rural Action. And it's through these partnerships that we're kind of always on the cutting edge of what solid waste is. But it could be so much more. If there was a horrible emergency, the solid waste district and the COG could move forward and help with debris management, because we would have the equipment and we would do it with our equipment, with our people, the COG's people. If we wanted to get a tub grinder so that we could take it around to all of the communities in the region so that they could make better compost. LADA, Earthworks has requested it, Ohio University's requested it, many communities throughout the area have requested it. It breaks up big, huge logs and is able to grind the stuff, and it's an expensive piece of equipment, not one organization. Mayor Patterson has raised in the past an anaerobic digester for the sewage. What if we could take care of that? All of the communities here, and there are a couple ways that we could do that, and that is through a parcel fee that the district could get. We could help pay down the debt that the recycling center has now, and work on the operations and be able to pay off these major things with just a small fee on improved parcels within the district. Can we work with other people outside the district? Of course we can, whenever we can. There's no law that prevents us from partnering with other governmental entities. But I think first and foremost, this is not far-fetched. The district and the city and the county have worked together long on this issue. We're at a critical time in our resource trajectory. With climate change, you should see my plan, my 15-year-old plan, and how it reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And if I had money, if I had real money, then we could do even more. And if we partnered more, we could do more. So I think working together, it would be an incredible thing. Folks, one more thing. A number of people have raised the monopoly issue. And I just want to say that having written a 350-page document on the solid waste in this district, besides Nelsonville and Athens, everything else is free enterprise. There's not one other organization up until last week that was doing curbside recycling, and that was Athens Hockey and Recycling Center. So the garbage monopoly will not be over if we do a COG, but we will be at other people's whims moving forward, perhaps, if we don't form the COG.
Member Clodfelder, you had a question?
I
Yes.
just had a comment actually for you before you leave the podium. I think it's a really intriguing process that the formation of a COG might get some other communities to start recycling, if that's what you were implying.
Oh, they recycle. I have 22 locations throughout the district
For drop-offs?
of drop-offs,
Yeah.
and we recycle 1,600 tons there, and that doesn't include all of the special events, of which the public, April 20th at the fairgrounds from 9 to 1 will be our recycling day. July 13th, household hazardous waste is coming to Athens County. Collection days at the fairgrounds, and then October 19th. We're also starting this week a tire education project for our, all of our tire retailers, so that they are informed about what the regulations are.
How does ORC 16708 work with that? And I'll read that. No council of governments, maybe it's not no, a council of governments may not jointly purchase items without competitive bids on behalf of its members, the cost of which to each political subdivision would exceed the statutory amount for which competitive bidding is required. This is from an email that you got to President Crowell, and he circulated to the rest of council members. What does that mean? Even if we did all that, it's still subject to bidding?
Not the service for trash and recycling, because
The purpose of the COG is that.
so the purpose of the COG is to provide the members with those services, so it would not need to be bidded. In the case of OU, because there's in the Ohio Revised Code, it allows municipalities and other governmental organizations to contract with other governmental entities for services without it going out to bid. So what that refers to is anything that the Council of Governments wanted to do that their member organizations would have to bid out, they would also have to bid out. So say that the Council of Governments decided to build a CHARM, which is a Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. The construction of that, if it was over that dollar amount, they would have to send out to bid. And then this is an important piece of that. It's gonna, so you know how Ohio Revised Code has different standards for different members. It's gonna be the most onerous that is gonna be, that's gonna determine what you have to send out to bid. So school districts could actually be part of the Council of Governments, and they have many fewer bidding requirements. But if it was school districts and the solid waste district, instead of the bidding requirements of the school district, it would have to be the ones for the solid waste district. So that is what that was referring to.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So we'd love to have you join.
Yeah. Mr. Atkins, you want to say something?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Commissioner?
Jane and Chris has done a great job. I actually made the motion today to do this morning. And what I was hoping is instead of different groups trying to figure out what a COG is and what it's going to be, that we jointly done that. And so it would speed up the time frame to allow the recycling center to maintain what they have, and we could do it jointly as a committee, whoever you all want to have. And of course, we made our decision this morning who would actually be a part of this. So, and there's some confusion about where I stand on this. I support the solid waste district 110%, always did. The question was, does the county join and the solid waste join? I'm on both boards, and it didn't make sense. It'd be like city council being a member and the administration being a member. So I just want to make sure it's clear. I think this is a great thing. We just got to figure it out, and hopefully it works, and we keep the folks that we have doing recycling, and it gets bigger, and we get rid of less trash and recycle more. So I just wanted to clear up where I was at, because people thought I was against something. And so, and I'm 10 days ago was a great grandfather, so not a grandfather, but a great one. So, thank you.
Okay, we went, it's now 7:45. I'm going to close the discussion on this and for the committee of the whole, and the next committee that's coming up will be Finance and Personnel Committee, which is full of very boring facts and figures and things. So you're all welcome to hang around and listen to us if you like. Thank you for coming. What? Thought you had a question. Well, let's see. As soon as this clears out, I'll tell who's on the committee. Members McCary, Wood, and Clodfelder, and me.
How are you doing, James?
Yeah, he's here.
See you, James. Well, I'm not sure I have your phone.
Lots of checks. Yes, I did. You could gaslight me into thinking that I'm not.
Yeah, just
I
a
would
second.
totally. You could just peer pressure me into joining.
I think so.
Oh, sure. It's not even mine.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah.
We'll give him another 30 seconds
Very much.
before I press the red button.
I want to hear about your trip.
Have you ever seen the red button?
Yeah.
No, where is it? Right down, right there.
Good to see you.
Don't ever press it.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
My pens are in my coat.
Okay, well, the Finance and Personnel Committee, please come to order with members McCary, Wood, Clodfelder, and Chair Jeff Reisner, that's me. And so our first item that we have here is City Sewer System Improvements, project number 330, Water Pollution Control Loan, tentative award of contract, and authorized appropriation and expenditures. And I believe our City Service Safety Director has these detailed.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Member Reisner. There are three pieces of legislation ultimately that I'll seek with this, and to take you back a little bit, this has been an ongoing project 330, which is basically the improvements to the sewer system necessary to support the receipt of county sewage as well as improve our system, and do a significant amount of upgrades that are necessary to support growth at the ridges, growth at University Estates, growth in the western portion of the city, and upgrade a couple lift stations that are in dire need of that. All while using the 0% money that we get because we are able to, we're at one time extending sewer service beyond the municipal boundaries. So that regionalization loan ultimately is what's allowing us to pay for Project 330. Of note, Project 317 also was included in the regionalization loan. That was a much earlier effort, and that's the work that's ongoing right now, which is the main that crosses the ridges, Tier 2 land, that southern portion, as well as up Dairy Lane, and brings sewage in from the southwest. And that needed to happen earlier in order for us to meet our agreement with the county. Also, that it just made sense to break that project out as a different project. So 330, basically has three parts. Three parts are upgrade to what we refer to as the Bedrock lift station. Bedrock is no longer there. However, the lift station is in front of where Bedrock was, which is on Union Street, State Route 56 there in the western portion of the city. And that's basically a replacement of that old can-style lift station with a lift station that's modern and is sized correctly to be able to move the level of sewage that we need. Another portion of it is a force main that comes in West Union Street and ultimately allows us to bypass the Depot Street lift station. That is something I'll come to you in the coming months to be able to deliver. And then the last portion is the Richland Avenue lift station replacement. The Richland Avenue lift station is in the northeast corner of the Richland 682 roundabout. If you've ever kind of paid attention when you go through the roundabout, you see that lift station. And that's basically what moves all the sewage south of the river, across the river to hit the gravity trunk line near Peden Stadium. And so that lift station will get replaced. replaced. A new line will get bored underneath the river to be able to deliver all of that as part of the third portion of Project 330. But what I'm asking you for this evening is 3 pieces of legislation to support 330. I would have liked to have started some of this in the fall. We had 2 things that happened here in the fall that precluded that, and why I'm asking you to rush on this. Number one is council ended as a body, so I couldn't move legislation through the end of the calendar year because it was a new council, so it couldn't have done that. And secondly, I lost a very dear and critical member of our staff who was on top of all these things, and leaving a much less qualified person, me, to pick up the ball and run with it and ask you to pass this legislation. So the 3 pieces of legislation that I need are an update to Ordinance 014419. 014419 is the legislation that allowed us to apply for the 0% interest loan, and all I need you to do is pass it again in its existing form, because the EPA says it's too old. So you can just amend it and repass it and re-sign it, and that'll allow us to reapply for the 0% loan. The second one, and this is, I think Member McCary has dealt with this on Project 317 before, but it's an odd provision that the EPA makes us do when we use the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, which is called a resolution of tentative award. And so next Monday, I'll ask you to pass a resolution of tentative award based upon the bids that come in this Friday. And it's the only kind of it's the only kind of construction project where we have to do this, which basically is a 1 reading resolution where the legislative body says, we recognize that Reisner Construction is the low bidder on this project for this amount of money, and we believe that we will tentatively award to Reisner Construction. And the number that has to be in there is whatever the bid number is plus 5%. For contingency. And then the last portion, and this is the third piece of legislation, and this could probably go through normal readings, although I would ask you to consider to go a little faster on this if you could, and that's the appropriation and authorization out of the sewer fund 750637 TC 500, which is the actual money necessary to do this, the appropriation authorization. So appropriating those loan proceeds, and that's $1.73 million for this project. So, like I said, that could go through regular order, but I'll have a good bid after Friday, hopefully. And so the sooner it passes, the sooner I can get somebody under contract, and the sooner we can get this project moving. So that's the first item on finance and personnel.
Questions from committee?
Thank you. Director Stone, could you repeat what you mentioned about, I believe it's a gravity thing near Peden? What was that, and what does it do?
Yeah, so if you can imagine like looking at a map of the city of Athens, and I'll try not to overcomplicate this, but before we treated sewage, we ran all of our sewer lines to the Hocking River and emptied the sewage into the Hocking River, and it went away. At some point, the United States of America decided that we shouldn't do that any longer, and we built sanitary sewer lines, and then gradually separated them from storm lines so that you isolated sanitary sewage and it went in one place. But all of those drains were already flowing to the Hocking River, right? So in the 1950s, when we started this effort to collect our sewage, not just send it to the river, we built a trunk line, which basically follows the river around the city, and it's a deep, large sewer that carries the majority of the city. If you can imagine, it's kind of like your artery, right? Like your aortic artery, but in this case, it would be a vein, right? Because it's returning. Yeah, so that's functionally what it is for us. In the 90s, we built a second line right beside it, which we call the relief sewer, which basically, almost tripled the capacity of it. But functionally, it follows the old river alignment. And proceeds down where the railroad used to go, and then heads to the wastewater treatment plant. Interestingly, it runs through the basement of Baker Center. It's this gigantic sewer line, and so we will hit that line with the sewage coming across the river from the south side right by the Peden Stadium parking lot, like the north end of the parking lot.
Oh, Member Claflin.
Director Stone, could you, perhaps it would be reiterating, but could you explain a little more about how the timing of Project 330 relates to when these increases to the system are coming in from the county and the ridges
Sure.
and all of those?
Yeah, that's a great point. So Project 317 is already underway. I've already appropriated. It's being built right now. That receives about 70% of the county's sewage that will come in. But it also provides a sewer for the Ridges Tier 2 land, which is the land that's been identified for future growth in the city. It's basically the Ridges land south of Dairy Lane. So that's the secondary benefit that the city gets, as well as putting a new sewer line on Dairy Lane and supporting all the earth there. So that's going and happening. And like I said, it's about 70% of the sewage coming in. The remaining 30% is going to come in from Union Street, and this project supports that to a certain extent, as well as any other in-city growth that happens in that region, whether it be what we call the Numberfest land, if that were the annex, and this would support that, and then any other growth in that particular area. The county is coming online gradually because they built their system, or they built portions of their system, but then people have time to connect. Right, so right now we're connected on the south side through an alternate means. Basically, we're bringing sewage up Richland Avenue, but that isn't the long term the best route. Right, eventually that will be too small of a line to be able to support that, and so it needs to go and get switched over to this new line. Does that help explain a little bit? So I would say, we're really, we've been going and doing this. You passed this back in 19, right? The first part of this, and I'd say we're probably well into 2026 before this is all said and done.
Okay.
Member Wood?
Yeah, rewinding to the cost question, you said earlier that maybe a lot of it was covered through a zero. Can you repeat what that is, and does that cover the 1.7 million?
It does. Yes. Thank you, Member Wood. So. We've really taken advantage of this opportunity, and the opportunity is because we were accepting sewage from another jurisdiction, we became eligible to access money through the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund that is for regionalization. And what we've done is we've thrown everything but the kitchen sink into our ask for that. So not only are we building the bare minimum to receive the county sewage, but we're also improving needed improvements in the Athens system. And it's 0% for 30 years. So, if you think about a mortgage, that would be a great mortgage to have, given that inflation happens every year. And so, what we're trying to do is access that for, what we need to receive the county sewage, as well as what we need to improve for the city of Athens for the long term. We're trying to take advantage of that one time, because you only get it once, right? When you're regionalizing. All three parts of so Project 317, which we're already doing, is part of it. The dewatering equipment we installed at the wastewater treatment plant is part of it, and then all three parts of Project 330 will be under that 0% 30-year vehicle.
Other members of council, questions? Member Spielness.
I hesitate to ask this, but so down the street from me, across from 682, we have those apartments. And that big, giant, ugly structure, is that a lift station?
It is.
So are they going to look like that? I know they don't all have to be that big because it has to be a line of sight thing or something.
Right. So, to answer your question, the lift station in front of Bedrock has to be able to see the towers with a line of sight. My understanding is, right now we can see the towers currently, so I don't think it's going to be that much taller, if at all. That lift station at Kershaw Green was new, and because of the location of the hill, it couldn't see the tower. So I'll double check the height of the tower, and I will send you that number. That will be at the new Bedrock, or the 56 lift station.
Thank you.
Other members of council?
I guess I have a follow-up to Member
Okay.
Wood's question. With the amount of money money in that zero interest 30-year loan, does it appear at this point that you're going to have sufficient money in that fund to cover all the improvements that you want to make through like 2026?
Sure. So there's two funds that we use to service sewer debt, and sewer debt is our highest amount of debt that we have in the city, and it has always been since I've worked here, and probably will always be in the future. I mean, it's expected that communities take on debt to deal with their sewage systems and then use their rates to go and pay it back. So there's two funds that we use that we pay it back, the sewer fund and the sewer debt fund. About 75% of the money that comes, I think that's the split, 75% of the money that people pay on their sewer bills go into the sewer fund, and about 25% pay into the sewer debt fund. And all that is a vehicle that the council put in place under Councilmember Bain at the recommendation of Auditor Hecht a long time ago, so that we kind of squirreled away money used to service debt, right? But in actuality, you can use either one to pay back, because it's all those proprietary sewer funds. The projections we have right now with modest increases, say that we'll be able to handle our debt into the future. So I think the last time we talked about sewer rates, we produced a spreadsheet, and that goes out till 2040, and I shared that with council. I think I shared it with a couple of council members. This was last year when we were talking about sewer rates, and that kind of gives you when we're going to start paying back those certain loans, and I can share that with you if it's something that you can't sleep and you'd like to do something to get yourself to sleep at night.
I would like to receive that.
Sure.
Anything else? Acting Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, have a comment to make sure that council members remember from our orientation the necessity at times to pass legislation without having three readings. As a council, we try our best not to have to do that, and definitely not to have to pass legislation at first reading. It's always important to allow the community to process something and to be able to at least get to second reading. But as Director Stone has mentioned, next week we need to have the first reading and suspend the rules and vote on passing that legislation at the first reading, and that's just necessary. Again, as he mentioned, this was first passed back in 2019, so it's been many, many years. It just needs to be repassed in order to fit the approval. So I just want to make sure everybody understands, and if they have any comments now, would be the time, I think, rather than when that is coming up next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, nothing further. We'll move on to our next topic. Wastewater remote site telemetry improvements, amend ordinance 50-23. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Member Eisner. So this is just a modification to 5023, and it's increasing the authorization and appropriation by $75,000, and this allows us to do four more sites that weren't envisioned when this project started, with the untethering our sewer telemetry system from our water telemetry system. The four sites are the lift station that member Spelden has talked about, the ugly one, and then the three influent the three influent meters that are going at the county lift station, so that we can see those at the wastewater plant. And so this will change and amend that legislation. This is an ongoing project that's been going on for a while. I don't have the project number in front of me here, but it's been going on, for a while now. And this would amend that and add an extra $75,000. So it'll go from $1,075,000 to $1,150,000.
Questions from committee? Member Klotfelder.
Could you explain in simple terms what the benefit of doing that would be, please?
Right. So the telemetry system is the mechanism by which we control the system out away from the plants, right? So different communities do it different ways. In the old days, we actually, there was in the very old days, you sent a person out and they would turn things on and off. In the not quite as old days, there would be a telephone line that you would dial, and then in the modern age, we use what's called a telemetry system, which is a series of 800 megahertz radios. That system was kind of built over time, and it was all built around the water treatment plant. And this project untethers the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. So they're two completely isolated standalone systems to be able to control. Why is it important that we use this mechanism as opposed to the internet? And I would argue, look at some of the communities that have been subject to cyber attack around the country, and it's just something that I am absolutely it's forbidden, and that I forbid my staff to connect these telemetry systems to the internet in order to avoid risk of access to the outside. So these are isolated controls systems. If you hear the term SCADA from time to time, SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition, this is the way that we do supervisory control and data acquisition out in the city. So when we talk about our remote sites, we're talking about lift stations, water booster stations, water towers, water reservoirs. Those are the remote sites, and there's about 50 of them around the city.
Other questions? Committee? Council? No? Okay. Moving right along, and let's see. Property sold by, internet auction. And so the internet comes back. What do you got to sell?
Sure, I'll speak to this one. I don't have anything to sell right now. Councilmember Reiser, this is under Ohio law, it's an annual retirement that council passed an ordinance to allow for the sale of items by internet auction if the city chooses to do so for disposal of things. And so Patty in the mayor's office every year at the first committee meeting in council brings this ordinance back to council to ask for permission to do it again in case it's something that we decide to do throughout the year.
Okay, so no three readings? No.
Sure.
Okay, great. Questions on that? Member Swank?
Dollar limit on this? In other words, if something's worth more than a certain amount of money, do we just have to come before this body?
Right. Thank you, Member Swank. So anything that is valued at over $1,000 has to independently be authorized for disposal by the city council. And that's why from time to time we'll have weird stuff that will come in front of you and seek your permission, like I do at the end of this meeting, at the very last item on the agenda, to ask your permission to dispose of something. And so that's just an Ohio Revised Code requirement that it's statutory that anything valued over $1,000. And then certainly anything with a title. That's the other thing. So there can be things that are, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in there again, but something could be valued under $1,000, but because it has a title, the council has to authorize disposal if the city is to get rid of it.
Other questions? Anyone? No? All right, well, that takes care of Finance and Personnel Committee. Next up is City and Safety Services, of which Chair is Member McCary, Members Reisner, Thomas, and Swank. So I don't have to move. And I'm glad I don't.
I think he's different the whole time.
I think so.
I wouldn't squatters' rights.
Yeah.
Thank you, President Pro Tim Reisner. We have 4 items on our City and Safety Services agenda for this evening, beginning with City Fiber Network Project number 347, amending Ordinance 05-22. We need some more money for this project, and I just want to note that the fiber project has been an important priority established in our comprehensive plan. Actually is one of the top concerns of citizens for improving businesses. And I believe our City and Safety Services Director can provide some additional information about the funding needs.
Sure. Thank you, Member McCary. And to kind of go back to what the project's purpose is, the city network between all of the buildings, and this is a different network, not the telemetry network. This is the network that we, all of the various sites are connected by. Used to be connected when the city was allowed to have a franchise with a local telephone provider by things called T1 lines, which were hanging on their poles as a condition of that franchise agreement. When deregulation happened and GTE ceased to be a thing, the local telephone provider said we're not going to maintain those T1 lines anymore. And so Mayor Abel, during his administration, had to come up with a solution to that, and At the time, the best technology was line of sight microwave, or at least the one that we could afford was a line of sight microwave network, basically, that allowed us to shoot that data signal around to the various city buildings to allow that both phones and internet and such to all be connected back to City Hall. We receive our pipe to the outside, our internet access to the outside through Ohio University, by the way, that comes into City Hall and then shoots out to all the different sites, and that's through Ornet at Ohio University. So we don't pay for it, which is good. But to be able to reach the buildings, we put in that microwave system. The microwave system is old technology. It's difficult to fix when it gets out of kilter. You got to have someone come and climb the towers. When the leaves grow, they block the signal. It's kind of like Dish Network, right, at your house. And the leaves grow, they block the signal. And so we made the decision a couple years ago to buy excess fiber optic cable when it was cheap on the market and have a spool of it, and then when the time came to hire a company to come and connect our buildings. And so we've been doing that under Project 347. Connecting our buildings, phase 1 is done, which connects City Hall to Arts West, the water treatment plant and the service garage, and also into the armory for use in the future. Phase 2 will be to connect the east side facilities as well as the new fire station. So the wastewater treatment plant, the pool, the community center, and the new fire station. And so we had $500,000 appropriated initially. We've gone through that with phase 1. As we get into construction of phase 2, the current estimate is about, get this right, $103,000 more than we have currently appropriated, and so that'll take us to $603,000, and we're seeking an increase in the authorization for that, and I'd like to use ARPA funds for that. There were $250,000 appropriated in the annual budget in ARPA funds. There is a balance in the unappropriated balance of $20,432.70, and that's the end of the ARPA funds. And so what I'd like to do is ask for the rest of that to be appropriated, and then to increase the authorization on Project 347, and then in a future meeting I will come to you and speak to you about ideas for the balance of those ARPA funds, because we do need to get those spent at some point here over the next year and a half, and I can spend money. So I've got a couple places where I think that we're going to need to spend those funds.
So was the total amount that we would be increasing, was it the 103?
Correct. So right now, 0522 authorizes and appropriates $500,000. This would increase the authorization by $103,000 to $603,000. Additionally, I'd like to go ahead and appropriate $20,432.70 into the TC 500s of the ARPA fund.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Other members of council? Yes, Councilmember Clough.
Just one, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, Director Stone. The $500,000, is that part of the city's annual budget? That's just money there for this, and then we're just appropriating the 103 plus the 24 from the ARPA money? Could you just go over that again, please?
So the original appropriation was also ARPA funds.
Okay.
Back in the beginning of the city received about $2.58 million in ARPA funds to be spent before the end of 24 on a variety of things, and we've used it for a host of things. We've used it twice to fill holes in the garbage fund rather than raising rates. We've used it to shore up losses in revenue in the rec department, because during COVID, people didn't go and we lost a lot of revenue, and so we moved ARPA money there. Most recent thing that this body did was move $500,000 of that money into a long-term strategic reserve, and that was one of the last ordinances passed at the end of last year. So if you're interested in the list of all the different places of where we put $500,000 towards the armory, and that's probably where I'm going to ask you to put the remainder of it here, because I got bids in on the armory, but that's not on the agenda tonight. So yeah, there's a host of places that we've spent that ARPA money on.
Okay, great. I guess just to further clarify what I was asking, would this take any money out of the city's general fund, or is it all ARPA money?
No, it would not take money out of the general fund. Yes, it is all ARPA money.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any questions from audience members on this topic? Then we will go ahead and move on to our second agenda item, updated fire station easement, amending ordinance 123-23. So if that sounds familiar, we already discussed getting electricity to our fire station, but we have some updated details and a different route that requires an update, and I'll ask Director Stone to elaborate.
Thank you, Member Carey. After AAP brought me the required easement to be able to get electricity to the fire station and the route, and you passed that ordinance so that they could get started, they came back to me and said, we can't take it that way. We got to go a different direction. And the reason for that is they had another property owner in that area that they required an easement from, and that other property owner has not responded to them. And so we got to basically go around them, which slightly changes the alignment on city lands. They are proceeding, bringing power to the station, basically at their own risk without an easement, understanding that we would amend this and get the new easement.
Great. Yes, Member Swink.
Would this new easement or this amendment, whatever, also rescind the previous easement so we get that off the books?
Yes.
Okay.
Good question. Other members of the committee?
I don't think we ever recorded it, so I don't think we'll, but in fact, I might not have even signed it after you granted authority to do so. But I will double check on that.
That'd be the easy way.
Yeah, I got to look at the timing, so.
Easement questions from other members of council? Audience? All right, we'll move on to our third item. Pretty exciting, Richland Avenue Playground renovation, project number 368. I like it when we get to start new projects that are also in line with our comprehensive plan. And in this case, we are going to see a lot of accessibility improvements where our Richland Avenue Park is going to be universally accessible to a wide range of ages. And once again, I'll invite Director Stone to add any additional details.
Now, remember, Carrie, I know that you have a lot of information
sure.
on this one
Yeah.
that we were excited about having you talk about.
Including some key pieces of equipment that have fun names for the kids.
Right. So I was really hoping they would make it in the record.
Okay.
But this is a $170,000 appropriation that was planned for, and as part of the plan to improve the Southside Park, the Richland Avenue Park, and basically replace a lot of the equipment there with modern playground equipment. There was a pretty comprehensive effort with a couple different bodies to include the Rec Advisory Board and the MRDD board. I feel like, and as well as the Disabilities Commission, to review this and select elements that are appropriate for this location, and additionally, and I'll stick this in a whereas when we craft the ordinance, but the Arts, Parks, and Rec Director has applied for a $50,000 grant from T-Mobile, which we're cautiously optimistic on. Now, we're not making it contingent upon getting that or not, but if that's the case, that money would come back into the 273 fund to replenish some of these monies that would go to do this project.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, we received letters of support from the Athens County Board of Developmental Disabilities, the Commission on Disabilities, the Child Development Center, the Recreational Advisory Board, and the mayor. So there's been a lot of support, and those key pieces of equipment included the Weesaw, the Dino Climber, and the Pig Gravel Digger. So those should be all of high interest for our community members. And I believe I was just going to ask about the expected timeline on the grant. Was it May?
I'll have to get back to you on that specifically. I don't know when. It was this year that we would find out if we got awarded. I just don't know. And by the way, this is going to be built under our Sourcewell collective purchasing agreement the city is a member of. So Sourcewell is a collective purchasing agreement that allows basically that bidding to have happened externally, and that's why, even though it's over the threshold of $75,000, that we can go direct with this particular playground provider under Sourcewell.
I understand that there are lots of details available. One thing that stood out to me was the substitution, I believe, if I was understanding it correctly, of turf for grass, and that is the standard now. Is that correct? Am I imagining like fake grass? Is that?
You are asking me a question that I am
that's all right.
aware of the answer, but I will get it for you by
All right.
next
Well,
week.
I believe other council members may eventually want to see those plans, but I think that's very exciting news for everyone. Any questions from, yes, Councilmember Swank?
I'll go.
Reisner?
Oh, I remember, it's probably been about 10 years ago that the Athens Rotary put quite a bit of effort and monies into improvements on the park. And I was wondering how those improvements will be changed or eliminated, or I'd hate to see what they did disappear, is what I guess what I'm.
I don't think they disappear. I think there's two different portions of the park that are getting improved, but
Okay.
I'll follow up on that question, because I know that Athens Rotary was contacted
what I
and
thought.
involved.
It's a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Swank.
Is there any possibility, since we're getting a brand new shiny car over there, that we can also take care of one of Athens' greatest eyesores? And that is the chain link fence along the edge there of that park. If you're coming from the Convo and you come across the bridge, that first section of fence is chain link rusted fence. It's like along the East River in New York City. It's pathetic. And then all of a sudden we get to this very nice black fence, much like we have down at the city pool. Could we look into replacing that chain link fence and making it consistent?
Sure. Yeah, Member Swank, thank you. That that fence is ODOT limited access right-of-way fence, so there must be a fence. That is built by the Ohio Department of Transportation when the limit of access was acquired for State Route 682. I think we could get it to be a different fence.
Yeah.
Because I think that fence went all the way down to Dairy Lane when it was originally purchased and, or originally placed by the Ohio Department of Transportation back in 1970. And so at some point we got permission to put the black fence in. I think we could probably get permission to go all the way, but I don't want to say definitively yes until I talk to the Department of Transportation.
Great, thank
about
you.
that.
Yeah, sure looking a lot nicer.
Do we have any final questions or comments on this discussion at the park? We'll move to our final discussion item, agenda item for City and Safety Services this evening. Amending titles for recreational marijuana and its use on public property. And we recognize that we already banned tobacco use, whether that's something you chew or smoke at a park, for instance. And now we need to get in line with the contemporary laws in Ohio and make sure that people understand that it's not feasible or permissible or legal to use vaping mechanisms or other marijuana devices at our public facilities as well. Do you have anything to add, Director Stone?
I think you have draft legislation, and you know,
Yeah.
when the non-smoking or no smoking in the parks law passed several years ago, marijuana wasn't legal in the state. Now it is, and so you know, we just thought it appropriate to ask you to consider making so you can't smoke weed in the park. I know the parks are supposed to be fun, but not that fun.
So we'll be updating some definitions. For instance, use of any form of tobacco is now going to include but not be limited to vaping. And use of any form of recreational marijuana includes inhaling, exhaling, burning, edibles, liquid, vapes, and other lighted smoking devices or papers for burning marijuana or any other matter of substance that contains marijuana, including but not limited to vaping. There's also some information in here about ensuring that we are not having cigarettes or marijuana items contributing to waste, garbage, and pollution. I will open up to questions and comments from committee members. Councilmember Swank.
So real quick, this just basically pertains to city-owned property, Parks, Recreation, the other. Also, I'll take Mayor Crowell's job here since he's over in the mayor's seat. 91503A, areas. We need to get rid of one of those A's. A little typo there in the thing.
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments from other members of council? Yes, Councilmember Spilnes.
Well, it occurred to me that I haven't heard the latest on this, but our leadership in Columbus has been talking quite a bit about these kinds of regulations. So I'm wondering what the rush is for us to do this locally when they're probably going to pass something pretty quickly, right? So I think it would be, seems wise to see what they're gonna do, so we aren't repeating what they are already gonna do. So that's one thought I had. Another thought I had is edibles are a different thing than smoking, vaping, etc. So I don't see how we can regulate that in the same way as we would smoke.
It's my understanding that we would be, right now, as the law has it, you couldn't chew tobacco at a park in Athens either. So in the same vein, now I guess you can't eat your edible marijuana candies there. Is that correct? Okay, and then did you have another?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about chewing is that you spit, and it's a whole different thing than swallowing some candy, sort of. So I don't see them as comparable.
Okay.
You've never chewed tobacco, have you?
Not planning on it either, as a matter of fact, but just saying, I don't think they swallow it.
Before we go to the other questions that committee members have, does the administration want to respond to any of those particular points about the state legislation and our timing?
We didn't consider the state. We really were looking at a non-smoking ban in city property, understanding that our non-smoking ban specifically governed tobacco, and it was called out in a bunch of different places, tobacco. Right. Knowing that you can now smoke another substance, we could have an enterprising person that said, and so we just thought it appropriate to go ahead and make that change. I didn't think that the state law and those regulations to the constitutional amendment that we're going to pass had to do with like public places and that sort of thing. I thought they had to do with like the way that licenses were issued and stuff. But there may be some things about that. So I'm not in a rush on this. It's we just had to bring it forward sometime. So we figured the first meeting, why not? So if you want to change it or if you want to do it later, I don't feel strongly about it, I guess.
Same topic, timing?
The topic is going back to eating, chewing, swallowing. Do we have regulations and ordinances against consuming alcoholic beverages in our parks, don't we?
Correct.
Okay, so, I mean, one's an intoxicant, marijuana's an intoxicant, so I really don't see an issue here. I mean, hell, we're a city, right? I mean, we can do what, there are parks, and we tell people this is what you can do in our park. And if you don't want to do what we tell you to do in our park, please don't come. It's that simple. So, if we want to pass it, I say we do it.
Yeah.
Council member Swank, and then we'll go back to other council members.
Considering this would take 3 readings and softball and baseball season are starting in not too distant future, I'd like to go ahead and get it in place, start the season with this. If the state comes through and changes it, then the state comes through and changes it.
Yeah.
I'd rather relax something than put something on stronger later.
All right, fair. Member Klebfelder?
It strikes me that, Member Reisner's point is a good one about alcohol, but that trying to police, so to speak, edibles would be very hard. People could just bring a baggie of gummy bears, and how would you prove that, that they contain marijuana? I think, I'm not really in favor of passing laws that you can't enforce. I think it begets all kinds of compliance issues and that people might be looked at suspiciously if they just have candy at the park.
Interesting. Councilmember Wood?
Yeah, Member Reisner's point. I haven't chewed any tobacco, but I have eaten some edibles. And, same thing. It's just not like, it doesn't seem like something that we, want to get into. Like, regulating that just to have that in the thing. Again, because usage of that is so opaque, and would you say like, oh, you can't have used it before? It just seems unnecessary.
I'm understanding this is kind of a possession issue, similar to like a public intoxication. Let's say that would be inappropriate, but in this case, having the drugs on your person would be a violation. I suppose that could be driven by complaint, just as if someone was smoking at a park, just to report drug activity, but that's my understanding. Other thoughts or comments? I should mention the sign, which is somewhat relevant. This legislation would be updating the signs that we have conspicuously posted at the entrance to outdoor recreational facilities, and this would now create some posted signs that say tobacco slash recreational marijuana free, or no smoking or smoking prohibited, but it's my understanding that we would want to go with the tobacco slash recreational marijuana free, so that it's not just implying limiting to smoking or vaping. But I didn't know, yes, Member Swank?
Even if we took edibles out of 91502, 91503 addresses it. Use of tobacco, recreational marijuana, tobacco products, recreational marijuana products. Edible is a recreational marijuana product. So 91503 does address it without specifically naming it. So if you're concerned about that and want to take edibles out, we've got it covered in the second thing there.
Thank you. Good points. Any other comments on this particular update for our smoking policy? Yes, Member Clodfelder?
To me, perhaps for the general public, it would be clearer if this, as Director Stone kind of implied, were just an extension of the non-smoking ban. So you can't smoke tobacco, you can't smoke weed, no smoking in the parks. I think policing edibles, I really think that would be problematic. I mean, I get it in principle, we could say don't do it, but how do you enforce that?
Member Swink?
When I was a dorm director, I hate to tell the story again, but I'll make it very short. When I was a dorm director in 1979, Pickering Hall, 225 freshman boys, when all you needed was a piece of paper from any high school in Ohio and you got in, which is true. We subscribed to the dumb enough philosophy. We gathered all the boys together the first of the year and we said, guys, we're not going to sniff your doors. We're not going to check your IDs if you're 18, and we're not going to look at our watch if your girlfriend's out at 12 o'clock. But if you're dumb enough to get caught, be prepared. And I kind of take the same philosophy here. We can't police every activity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 and a quarter days a year, all over the city. But when we are doing it, if you're dumb enough to get caught, then be prepared to suffer the consequences. So that's how I would answer that.
Councilmember Spielness?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Member Clodfelter. I'm not, I have to get used to saying that. That I absolutely feel comfortable with the idea of saying no smoking. Works for me. Again, I'm in no rush because we've been hearing a lot about what the governor and whatever has been talking about. So I assume they're coming up with something pretty quickly because they have to in order to finish the implementation of the law. But I think the gummies should be let go.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing that there's some suggestions for dropping the edibles, but as Councilmember Swank mentioned, marijuana products would be inclusive of that, so we might be okay with that change. Director Staley?
Can I speak to the policing of things? So there are a tremendous amount of laws inside the Athens City Code that, we don't actively pursue people. Like, there's no special tobacco unit that patrols the parks and looks to tase people that are smoking. It's a tool if there's a complaint that we can use to cause a behavior to stop. And so we do that with a lot of code things. We do that, there's a lot of criminal procedures. So if somebody calls and says, hey, this dog is barking really loud outside my house, we can go over there and say, hey, you can't have a dog bark really loud in your yard. And the Athens City Code says this. And so I guess as you debate this, I don't care whether edibles are in or edibles are out, but the question shouldn't be about enforcement. The question should be about whether or not you think it's appropriate to use edibles in the Athens City parks or not. And that's my 2 cents on that particular matter.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes. Councilmember Wood?
Yeah, well, just back to the, both the dumb enough to get caught and the, do we want to enforce these things, use them to, as enforcement tools if there's a complaint. I think, part of the strongest arguments for legalization about the problematic uses of law enforcement and rules in relation to the enforcement of drug laws in the past. Part of this whole thing was to, end that sort of problematic history, clean that up a little bit, ideally. I could just see this being weaponized against somebody. Hey, somebody I don't like is in the park. Can you go pick them up? I think they have weed, sort of thing. So like that actually is a stronger argument against it for me.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
I think I would just say that probably the biggest area that gets policed are playgrounds. So when you're at a playground with your kids and there's someone smoking, that's the most places I've ever heard people complain. That's where you're going to see a lot of people complaining if there's someone's bringing marijuana or pot, and is where the behavior after edibles would come into play more. If you're out in a state park, no one's going to see you or know. But if you're on a playground or you're around a playground and we've got certain age groups that are maybe having, too much fun, it's not necessarily something you want in your kid's setting. So I just think I don't think it hurts anything to leave it in. I don't think it's a targeting issue. I think it's just, we're not all going to do, play on the monkey bars, and half of us are, not middle schoolers or high schoolers, well, elementary school.
Thank you, Member Thomas and Member Swank.
At the end of the day, how's this relate to the taco ordinance? We don't do anything marijuana, do we?
It's escalating.
In the city?
Oh, you mean the zero fines?
Yeah.
I think there's a different penalty here because this is not a prohibition of use and a fine related to that. This is I think there's different penalties in the behavior in parks portion of Title IX. So that's a great question. I'll ask the law director. I don't think the issue is using it because we decriminalized using it in that particular legislation. I think the issue is using it in this spot.
Be a good question for Lisa, as you said, yeah.
Yeah, if she was here, that'd be a great question for her.
So we've had a number of differences of opinion on a couple different topics, including timing and whether or not we should wait for state to take the lead or introduce something on our own. Do we have any final comments on that topic? It's difficult to know the pace at which the state will move, so it seems to me that updating this makes sense, and I really appreciate the discussion about edibles. I think we might be able to perhaps get some input from our law director, but I believe that the spirit of this is to, as Member Thomas mentioned, really just talk about what we do and don't want at the parks. Here are the concerns about potentially unfair calling because you don't like someone and you want to say they might have something on them, but not sure we can control all those variables. So any final comments before we move to close this committee? Thanks for the great discussion and details, Director Stone. And that concludes City and Safety Services for this evening.
Yeah, 2 years. Right.
Next on the agenda is Transportation Committee, and that is chaired by Member Spionis with members Clodfelder, McCary, and Reisner. Take it away.
Well, thank you. We have 2 items on the agenda today. They're not all that exciting, so we should wrap these up. Well, one of them is actually kind of exciting. So do you mind if I take the boring one first? And we can just say, hey, is that bad?
I think procedure is you go,
You have to? Yeah. Okay.
unless we call a vote and then vote on it.
All right,
So
never mind.
5 minutes
I just
from
thought we
now.
could whip this out really quickly. All right. Okay, so the first item is the Columbus Road Shared Use Path Project number 365. Appropriate authorized funds for engineering design services. This sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to having you all get excited about this. And this relates to a couple of many things we've talked about. So we had a bit over $1 million for construction for this project. The standard ODOT procedures at the local agency pays for the design, and a small, in this case, 10% local share of construction. This will be a 2025 construction project, so we need to start the design now. Seems very reasonable. And Director Stone, if you could add to that, this is a major corridor into the community. It'd be really nice to have it look good.
Sure. Thank you, Member Spillier. So we're seeking $160,000 appropriated and authorized for design services on this particular project. We've gone through consultant selection following the standard procedure, both the city's procedure and the state law mandated procedure for qualifications-based selected. We have an engineering firm selected, and they've given us a proposal, and now we'd like to seek the appropriation to do this. This is for a shared use path, basically a path that's for both bikes and pedestrians on Columbus Road from approximately the intersection of the Hockhocking bikeway spur that comes in right beside the Ace Net to Theater Lane, if you know where Theater Lane is, which is the road that goes out to Greenleaf landscaping and the Days Inn back there. So it basically provides that shared use path. We're envisioning it on the river side of the road. This will allow access to, businesses on both sides. Hopefully we can, if we have enough funding, we actually do want to drop in a couple sections of sidewalk on the other side of the road where we can. Columbus Road is a former state highway. It has that feel of a highway, and so there are some challenges when you're building multimodal stuff in an area that feels like a highway. So there'll be some challenges in this design, but I think that our ultimate goal is to get Columbus Road to feel more like a city street. It's just going to take time to do that as we build this. So that's what we're seeking to do is get money in place to do the design.
Any comments, questions?
Go on. Will this path in some way serve the new hospital that's being built down there? And if so, how does it connect to it?
Sure. Thank you, Member Reisner. So if you look at the site plan for the hospital project, they actually envision a shared use path in the front of it, and this will actually be that ultimately and connect to the network. So yes, our goal would be that it does connect and interact with the walkways and such for the new hospital.
Great.
Go ahead.
Just a comment. I'm really glad to hear that a shared use path will be going in and that you're thinking about putting in more sidewalks. I think the more friendly we can make Athens to pedestrians, the better.
Okay. Any questions from?
Is there a possibility that this could extend up Columbus Road all the way to where it turns into North Lancaster? Or is that a much bigger project?
So that's what we envision. Member Thomas, that's where we envision phase 2. Ultimately when we applied for this funding, we called it phase 1, which is the flat part, and then there's the hill part. A few years ago, and I'm racking my brain on the time, I want to say it was in the 2014 timeframe. We did a project on Columbus Road where we widened the pavement and narrowed the lanes so that we could create a paved shoulder. Because prior to that, I think 2014, if you traverse Columbus Road, the edge line was right at the edge of pavement, and then there was a gravel shoulder all the way in. And so that helped some. It wasn't ideal, but it was what we had the money to do at the time. We did that in conjunction with the Waterline project. When we did that, we put that island in the 4-lane portion of Columbus Road. Those 4 lanes weren't needed anymore. They were built in a time when that was the state highway, and rather than continue to pave them every few years, we said, let's put that island in, and we captured some space during that project and built actually a wider shoulder in that case and actually marked them as bike lanes. But, phase 2 for this, I envision of being able to get this all the way up to connect up there by Dairy Queen. But this is the first portion of it on the flat portion where most of the businesses are. And of note, when we built the spur off the bikeway, one of the, we recognized that the hill was a barrier to people to get to the Columbus Road area, and so that was one of the reasons why that project was approved, was because you can functionally get around the city without climbing the 230 feet in elevation. I think is what it is to go from, like where Devil's Kettle is up to 2nd Street.
I think one of the exciting things about all this is that it's an opportunity for some real economic development on that corridor, and that's a wonderful thing for the city in many ways.
Absolutely, and we do see growth. There's questions a lot about property. I just spoke with a business professional down there who owns a building, and he says he's had, since they started the hospital, he's had 11 different offers on his building. Wow. Down there. So there is going to be a demand. We're going to see some changes on Columbus Road. We want to get ahead of it.
Great. Okay, any other, okay. And from the audience?
I just want to add a comment and a question. My name is Rob Delac. I live here in the city of Athens. I want to comment on the fact this is a shared use path. I think is the right design choice for this. So if you look at, if we're trying to encourage the average person to bike, they're not going to want to bike in a bike lane on a 35-mile-an-hour road. So the design on Columbus Road, where there is bike lanes now, is not really great for people other than serious cyclists. We want to encourage people to ride. The shared use path is the right design choice, I think, here. So it separates the cyclists from the traffic on the street. Some people can still ride their bikes in the street if they want to. If they're advanced cyclists and are comfortable doing that, they can. But this gives the option for anybody riding a bike to ride off the road, which is a good choice here. So I want to commend the city for that design choice.
Are you sort of representing the pedestrian task force?
As well.
I didn't say anything about who I represent. I'm just representing myself with this right now. So.
Okay.
But I do serve on the pedestrian accessibility and bicycle task force. Yes.
I think that's notable to point out there. Have a goal there, so thank you. Anyone else? All right, and last but not least, a real snoozer. Okay, so we're wanting to trade one of our ventilation fans with a Waterloo volunteer fire department. They're purchasing a new version of the fan that has a different battery platform than ours. It will be an even trade. It would need council action to dispose of ours since it is valued at more than $1,000. So the $1,000 issue comes up again. Like I said, a snoozer, but sounds like we got to get it done. No controversy? No
I
drama?
like fans as well as anybody.
Any more details about that, Director Stone?
We're trying to standardize with Milwaukee battery-powered equipment, on all of the rescue vehicles. And this happens to be a DeWalt fan. And so, like to Member Spilding's point, it's got a different battery connection. And so if we, they have a Milwaukee and they're getting a new one. And so they're going to give us ours and we're going to give them the DeWalt and then they'll trade that towards their new one.
So Waterloo Township will not have to use the DeWalt?
Correct.
Okay.
They got a grant to, trade in that one for it.
See, a real nice win-win.
Yeah. Good.
That's it?
Member Spilding, I'm sorry, to jump in. I think HAPCAP also made a late request to have another one of the city-owned buses disposed of. And that one is going to come forward as well. I think Debbie might have added that at the very last minute. This is bus 1601. It's a 2016 bus. It's got 273,000 miles on it. HAPCAP manages our transit system and our transit operation, but some of the buses are still owned by the city. And from time to time, when they dispose of them, council has to authorize the disposal. And so this is one of those situations.
Is it breaking down a lot?
It's worn out. I mean, it's 270. I mean, if you ever ride one of those buses, they get beat up pretty good. So yes, the answer is it costs more to maintain. At this point, it's time to get rid of this bus.
Can we get another electric bus?
That's a great question. I can pose to HAPCAP. Like I said, they got this on here late, and I actually didn't even know until this afternoon, and I got that data this afternoon. So I haven't had a chance to talk to them. We do have a kind of our standing meeting that we have with Athens Transit tomorrow, so I'll ask the question.
President Pro Tem Reisner, if I could, before we end up adjourning, since we're near that, I want to point out that we won't be continuing these conversations a week from today, but it would be a week from tomorrow due to the Martin Luther King holiday. So we will not be in session a week from today. It will be on the following Tuesday.
Good point. Come here Monday and it'll be an empty building. So that concludes the Transportation Committee. According to my agenda, that's it. So 8:50. Adjourned at 8:50.